and welcome to our third Cognitive Virtual. It's my great pleasure to welcome all of you around the globe, and I must say it's amazing to read all this chat, people coming from really around the globe, and I try to catch some of the countries and cities, and I would really love to share that with you. We have people from Brazil, from Mumbai, from Phoenix, from France, from Spain, from Mexico City, Canada, Massachusetts, Zurich, Geneva, Oman, Pakistan, Indonesia, Australia, Brussels, and a lot more. I must say it's really flattering. And thinking of this crisis we're going through, this social distance, actually it's not a social distance, it's a physical distance. We feel much closer than before. Our topic, AI, it's beyond technology. And those who knows us already know that for us, it's only about 10% technology and 90% the human being. We want to benefit from the technology. Hello? We want to use it for the human being for a better life. Now, SwissCognitive brings all the stakeholders, all the interests in the topic of artificial intelligence, where we rather talk about applied intelligence, about cognitive technology, about the real stuff. It's not magic. We're not talking about Terminators, neither about science fiction. Now, AI is beyond technology. As mentioned before, it's all about human. And we're very happy to announce our partnership with defense, with the Swiss Army Forces, because this is a very tricky topic. So let's share the slide. Social acceptance. Where is the social acceptance of technology? We want to find out. We want to know your opinion. So we are sharing with you the link. You will get it also in our wrap-up, and you will find it also in our webpage later on. It's about what is acceptable and what is not acceptable. It's going to be anonymous, and we will share the data with you in a few months. So now it's my great pleasure to introduce you to our first speaker from the States. It's Megan. Megan has over 20 years of experience leading best-in-class consulting and strategy in the talent management industry. She's passionate about the future of work and the impact of technology on the workforce. Currently, Megan is responsible for the strategy and product management of the key talent management platform within the global design, consulting, and software engineering of the company EPAN, who is one of our strong partners. Thank you very much. Megan, the virtual stage is yours.
Well, thank you so much for having me. My name is Megan DeSomery, and as mentioned, I lead a function within EPAM that's responsible for some of our people tools and how we're really trying to adapt to disruption with AI-driven people insights. So I'm very excited to kind of share things with you. What I thought I would do is just kind of set the stage a little bit for kind of why this is so important. Give you a little bit of a case study of my own organization, EPAM, and a little bit of an overview, and if I can squeeze it in, maybe just a quick live demo around kind of what we're doing today, and just a little bit about who we are. So the digital revolution, I mean, it's transforming the way companies across the world operate. And those that fail to change, they're being swept away by a tidal wave of technology innovation that we haven't never seen before. And there's constantly an emergence of new technologies, which means fundamental and permanent disruption in all markets, right? We're all having to adapt to that. We have to learn new skills. And, you know, areas and organizations that were once, you know, stable and felt permanent and profitable can disappear in a matter of years, if not even months. So if you think about just the crazy amount of data that's become available in just the last decade or so, it's really transformed customer expectations, right? So we're required to deliver value and experiences that weren't even imaginable just a few years ago. And this is going to continue when you think about just the Internet of Things, right? We're connecting billions of devices from mobile phones to fridges to light bulbs. And all this data has to be analyzed to be put to productive use. You layer in all the global challenges to that as well, whether it's jurisdictional, workforce, all those pieces play quite a role. So with all that in mind, how does that relate to some of our people challenges? I've read, and there's a million studies out there. One, I think it was McKinsey, showed that of the HR leaders that were questioned on their priorities for 2020, and certainly with the pandemic, I'm sure some of these have shifted. So take this a little bit with a grain of salt, I suppose. But only 9% of the CHROs agreed that their organization is prepared for the future of work. And some of their top priorities included digitalization skills, right? Because everything is moving in that direction. Leadership bench, a different approach to organizational design. But I also called out a couple others on this slide, and one is overcoming cognitive errors and biases. That wasn't in the survey. That's not what CHROs was saying, but I think it's worth mentioning because it impacts how adaptable we are to change. If there's so much research out there, and I don't claim to be an expert, but some that stood out to me are things like the halo effect or attribution error is maybe a better example where, where we're seeing that like managers, they need to create dynamic mobile teams, but our tendency is to prefer the status quo, and we attach, we kind of attribute some successes to status versus being adapted to change. And so that can be a significant barrier. And so if you think about some of the features of an adaptive enterprise, what does this kind of mean the way we work? And I'm not going to go into every one. We definitely have limited time, but I guess one way to think of it is we are all tech companies now, whether you're a retailer or an automotive manufacturer, whether it's self-driving cars or complex logistics for grocery delivery, right? Something that is had a huge surge during this pandemic that we're all experiencing on a global level. It doesn't matter. It seems like transformation and being digital is really at the heart of every successful company. And when we think of agile, we often think about that in an engineering context, right? How we develop code and those pieces. But the principles and practices can really be applied to every facet of the company. And if I hone in on kind of one area here, and that is data, because that really goes hand in hand. And as I mentioned, there's tons of data out there, and collecting it is really, it's only the first step, because I think agile companies are learning how to use that data to guide rapid decision making and deployments of teams, internally and externally. And an agile company really views their data about their people just as valuable as data about maybe their customers, right? Where we have endless amounts of data. And the challenge can be when you start talking about people data is it turns into this Orwellian or Big Brother, feel that this data is going to be used punitively, and we're going to be trying to track every key stroke, every search that you do, and all of that, and use that against us. So has to be a balance in here, and I think that's where transparency becomes so important. And what that can help us lead to is these connected teams, right? So that we can bridge silos and bring people together. And that's, I think, one of the good things about data transparency and collecting this data. And kind of one slide that I've been using lately to talk to some of my clients is, if you think about today, and I'm oversimplifying, of course, but things are very hierarchical, right? Very top-down approach, these groups with very important, skills, maybe they tend to be like condensed into these groups. And what we really need is to bring these together in networked teams. So kind of try to provide a visual of what that could look like so that we're bringing different skill sets, different perspectives, geographies together so that we have these cross-functional teams. But what does all this mean? And, how are we tackling this, like I said, at EPAM? Well, we realize that to do this, to adapt to this disruption, using some agile methodologies, we can't just collect the data. We need to do something with it. But the first step of collecting the data is certainly important. And so what we're seeing kind of fuel us is, yes, it's a set of tools. I'm not here to sell those to you. That's not my point of showing you these tools. It's more to show what we've done with some of this data, to make it more apparent and more relevant. So thinking of EPAM as a case study, we're a decent sized organization. I think our last count was close to 40,000 employees. We've had year over year organic growth, and we feel 5 factors play a role. But really, if I were to summarize, I think it's that we try to treat each element as important, elements being our people, the right processes, and the right technology to support that. And that those things work together, that technology alone doesn't do anything without the right people understanding that, it doesn't actually work. So here's a snapshot, if you will, of some of the tools that we use within EPAM. And my reason for showing this is that we try to use things across the entire employee life cycle so that we collect data in a meaningful way, so that we understand skills that people are achieving through our learning platform or through our recognition platform. We use that as another data point to say, oh, wow, maybe someone really is highly skilled in data science because they're getting recognition from their peers. But the way, by using these tools, it means that we do have a great kind of data footprint to work with because because our employees are actually using them. One of the biggest challenges, I think, of technology sometimes is, how do we get people to use it? And our goal is to kind of pull many systems together. So we have some homegrown ones, we have some external ones, and try to give a view of not just our people data, but also our project data, right? Because we do a lot of delivery for our clients. We're a services organization, engineering services. And so we track tons of project data, and we try to bring all that together, into one tool set. And shameless plug, a little proud that we've been able to get some external recognition. So let me give you just a 2-minute view into what this might look like. So this is kind of, if we just think of ourselves as a project manager here, Akeem Rose, coming into this solution, and let's just pick a really, really specific scenario here where he needs to find somebody with a certain skill set. So he's going to do a search for, everyone in the organization with Java skills. And in EPAM's world, this is kind of our demo environment. We've got tons of matches. And you could certainly do a more complex search. This is just kind of illustrative. But then what I want to do is try to understand this data further and filter it. So I want to make sure it's someone, because we track workload, someone that's available now. I need a Java developer, but actually I want to make sure that they are, let's say that it's their key skill and had a project role in mind. Maybe it's a team lead or a project coordinator, whatever that might be. And then we may want to filter it down further by country. So you'll see within a few clicks, we've gone from 24,000 results to 367 matches. And like I said, you can keep whittling this down until you get to just what you need. And if you notice, the way we're tracking these skills is kind of across the board. So it's not just a self-identified skill. We're saying, wow, this person, I can see it within their work history, or I see it because they've conducted maybe an interview, or they have been in events that cover it, so that we're really tracking, quite a bit of analytical detail about them. including, let me show you one more thing and then I'll get to a little bit, this will kind of lead into some of the artificial intelligence that we're trying to bring in here, which is, I just toggled to look at my project team as a project manager. I have 88 people, so I can see how my team is heavily skilled in .NET and Java, not as skilled, or I only have individuals that are good with visual design or performance testing, so kind of a little snapshot of how I'm doing. But you'll see I also track an attrition score. And this is a predictive algorithm that lets me know based on, I think we track something like 50 or 55 different data points, that I have people on my team that have been given a kind of high probability of attrition. And when I look at that and just select that group, it lets me see, well, how's that impacting? What projects are they on? What skills do they have? So I can start to really layer in important detail that's going to help me, understand what kind of disruption this is going to bring. And so that kind of leads me to, this is some things I just did live for you. When we talk about how we're using AI-driven insights, people insights, I can give you some really specific examples. And I won't go into tons of detail in each one, but I'll just let you get an idea. I think being able to, if we can collect all that data and do something meaningful with it, like, for example, one of the things we do is we look at and assign a rotation priority to people. And so the goal there is to be an early warning indicator where we might have some future attrition, or we want to prevent burnout and support professional growth. So we look at a number of data points. Here's just a few, right? How long maybe they've been on their project within a certain position, what their job level is, when their last assessment, all kinds of data elements around that, so that we can say, this could be a concern. We need to investigate this further. Very similar for predicted attrition. They kind of go hand in hand a little bit, where we track a relative as well as absolute kind of score or likelihood that someone might leave the organization. And this is an algorithm that our data science team developed. Sorry about. Okay, we have a little background noise there from the production team, I think, but I'll just keep going. Basically, we're trying to take all that data, and with our predicted algorithm, maybe it's just in my ear. It's just in my ear and not everyone else. We have then analytics that can help us see, how does that apply to everyone across the organization, and by looking at things like, when their last feedback was with their manager, what their latest learning is, how many projects have they been on, what role did they play. We're able to take a lot of that. When was their last increase? Compensation increase, all kinds of things like that to do this. And we've applied it and then, watched it to check its validity, and have had, I think, close to a 90% accuracy rate. So, using these types of things, they don't work on their own. It has to lead us to action, but it does help us understand our people better. Let me skip to just a couple more. So I'm at the end of my time, I believe. And one of the things that we do to try to promote our internal mobility and stop some attrition from happening is we have a matching algorithm as well, where we can say, look at people and suggest positions that are a good match for them, as well as for our sourcing people internally, we can also suggest who the best candidates are. So the kind of matching algorithm, goes both ways. And finally, the last item I'll just make mention of is we're working to try to, it's not so much to understand good versus bad attrition, but to help us understand who our top performers truly are, not just the ones that are well known in the organization. And so we have what we call an impact score that, again, uses tons of data elements, again, like our project work, are we technical, are we interviewers, technical or otherwise? Are we being used in the organization for any training? So all these things. So it's not just about a performance rating. It's about so much more. So again, just to kind of give you some insight into how. I really apologize, everyone. I don't know if it's only me I have talking in my ear from the production team. Hopefully you're not hearing that too. So sorry for the pause there. So just to wrap up, those are some of the elements that we're using at EPAM to try to understand our people better, adapt to disruption, and continue to use data, in a good way. So thank you so much.
One question we were able to pick up from there is Megan, how is the process for skill assessment? Can you elaborate on that really short, because we are a little bit late and I would like now to introduce the next speaker. Thanks, Megan.
Absolutely. It is a big question, but let me just say this. I think the way that we're trying to attack skills is multifaceted. So we do allow for our employees to self-identify skills and then kind of put in some information that helps us understand when was it last used, some proficiency levels. We have our managers also identify these, but then we try to take a little bit of a data approach, and we try to glean where skills also are being identified and come from based on real life activity that an employee is conducting. So if they're working on a project for digital transformation and, migrating everything to, the cloud or something like that, then we're able to kind of glean some skills that way. Same if they conduct interviews around certain things or anything like that. So we're trying to take a multi-pronged approach to understanding people's skills. It's not just a self-identified process.
Great. Thanks a lot for having you with us on the virtual stage. Now,
my pleasure.
It's my
Thank
great
you.
pleasure to introduce our next speaker, Dr. Lee Schlenker. He's professor at the Business Analytics and Digital Transformation and a principal of the Business Analytic Institute. They are offering executive training, coaching, and mentoring to address challenges with AI, digital ethics, and the development of smart cities. Over the last 20 years, Lee has led 24 missions in the banking, telecommunication, public work, and service industries. His recent conferences and publications have explored the social, organizational, and technical challenges to leverage data science, machine learning, and AI in business. Lee, the stage is yours.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm delighted to have this opportunity to chat. Andy and Dilith, I'd like to begin by my conviction that artificial intelligence alone isn't the answer to the current social and economic crisis. I don't believe what my friends in the tech industry are saying, that next week when we get out of lockdown and we take our bikes down the road, that we'll be at the dawn of a nouvelle economy in which digital transformation will be the key to the future value. I do believe that we're in a decisive moment in time in which human beings, the audience, and myself can take decisions to change the course of history. The question I ask is, how can we leverage artificial intelligence to take better decisions in choosing a different path out of the crisis than the one that we took coming in? I'm Lee Schlenker of the Business Analytics Institute, and I would like to explore how AI can enhance human intelligence. Let's begin by answering the question of why did they let me into this room and where do I come from? I'm the principal of a research and training institute called BAI, whose vision is to leverage data science to improve managerial decision-making. we focus in three areas: the managerial challenges of artificial intelligence, the opportunities and constraints of digital ethics, and the development of smart citizens. One of the things that we've learned from the current crisis is that crunching the numbers isn't enough to transform data to collective action. Today, more than ever, we need to develop managerial perspective to understand how human and machine intelligence can work together to chart out alternative futures for ourselves, our teams, and our communities. What do we mean by artificial intelligence? When we speak of AI today, we refer to machine learning and limited AI, who has the ability to, by extrapolating data points, improve decision-making, deterministic or stochastic environments. The goal isn't to replace human intelligence, robots, but to reduce the sources of risk, uncertainty, and ambiguity in the decision-making process. The challenge we have in business is that there's no direct relationship between data and action, as the different responses to the current COVID pandemic vividly demonstrate. At BAI, rather than suggesting that we can replace managers and employees, robots, we try to help organizations focus on the particularities of the decision-making process, the activities of perception, prediction, evaluation, and insight, and how machine intelligence can augment human potential in specific business situations. What do we mean by perspective? Be honest, if the world was flat, if we could reduce the complexity of human interaction into a data set, we would have no trouble plotting a course for the future. But unfortunately, life isn't a straight line. We need to keep one eye on the reality of the road ahead, while the other eye is looking at the numbers. Almost 600 years ago, coming out of crisis of the Middle Ages, Leon Battista Alberti suggested that if we could get our minds around perspective, we could understand this intricate relationship between data and action by analyzing the notions of figures, frames, horizon, and the oracle. Let's look at the pertinence of perspective today. As an example, I've taken a fairly poor representation of the outbreak, the COVID-19 crisis in China in February. I've doctored the image a little bit to replace the bright red coloring, the much more neutral gray. You can substitute whatever the numbers are on your particular business challenge today. 3 questions need to be asked in trying to understand the meaning of the data. The first concerns the semantics. In this particular example, does population density accurately predict the spread of COVID? Would it have been a much more sensible choice to look at the questions of socioeconomic status, education, or eventually better decision-making in trying to understand how COVID developed? We can also pose the question of syntactics. Is the question of infected cases the most important in understanding the challenges that lie ahead? Rather than talking about mortality, would it have made more sense to talk about morbidity, the social and physical, mental and physical impact of the pandemic ahead? And finally, in looking at the figures, we have to ask the question of pragmatics. What is the relationship between data and action? Do these figures actually push us to do anything other than panic? After looking at the figures, we have to put them in context. Frames are what actually gives data its meaning. In other words, data has no meaning intrinsically, other than in the stories we use to make the data come to life. Frames refer to describe what is productive and what's valuable. If we replaced mortality rates with morbidity, would the story make more sense? In trying to plot the road ahead, do we need to invent a cure, or do we need to innovate? Okay, we'll try to go a little bit quicker. Can we change the notion of stockholder to public value? We also can realities of what we can see from the future that lies just beyond the horizon. We use algorithms and heuristics to plot what's visible. By working on human and machine intelligence, we can extend the horizon. The horizon's often blocked by the clouds of risk, uncertainty, and ambiguity, by cognitive biases, by the primacy of rational thinking rather than emotional thinking. All of these questions need to be analyzed and resolved if we want to understand how we can co-develop and machine intelligence. Then finally, I wanted to focus on the oracle, because in Alberti's view, as important as the frame and the horizon, we also needed to understand the relationship between the manager and the data. Often there were hands or birds, or actually people outside the frame. Is the meaning of the story in the data itself? How can we use data visualization, analytics to improve the importance of the story? Is the key to value in the future in the data in the story, or in using AI to develop human intelligence? In terms of the takeaways, I'd like you to reflect that perhaps we are in a decisive moment in time, that we as human beings, consumers, managers, can change the course of history. AI alone isn't the answer to the current crisis. Managerial perspective, activities of perception, prediction, evaluation, and insight can allow us to put AI into perspective. There is no clear link between data and action. We as oracles need to be able to put the two together in plotting a road forward. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot, Lee. And I would love now to introduce you already to the next ones, because we really need to keep on track. I'm so sorry for the stress. We've learned about that. We will do it better next time. So now it's my very nice welcome of Gabriel and Eran. They're going to present together. Eran Sosnowiez is a brand builder and digital native. He's founder and CEO of Exceed, a digital marketing end-to-end agency actually based in Geneva. He's 11 years of experience in building global brands and digital marketing expertise, and he's a business partner of Cyteer. Cyteer is the company that Eran Reshef founded. Eran is a high-tech inventor and entrepreneur. His past companies actually has been acquired by IBM, like Sanctum, also Skybox Security, which has acquired by Provenance Equity Partners, and Collective, which has been acquired by the Israeli aerospace industry. Kol hakavod, Eran. So, Eran is the founder of Cyteer, a model-based algorithmic content generation platform, which he's also going to introduce now. The stage is your guys.
Thank you very much, Andy and Dalit and the rest of the team for this opportunity to present here. I'm going to talk about algorithmically generated truths. Specifically, about how model-based marketing can help us in the days of the corona. But before we actually do that, let's talk a bit about what model-based marketing is. When we speak about model-based marketing, what we mean, and it's a term that we invented, we are talking about three stages. First one is actually to model, to take a few thousand key opinion leaders and influencers and actually map out and understand who those people are. Once we know who they are, we can actually analyze the information flow around them. We can actually understand what they're talking about, what they care about, which kind of information they are most interested in, which one they're actually not very interested in. Armed with this information, with who those people are and what kind of information they share, we can actually make a lot of recommendations. Specifically, we're going to talk about algorithmically generated content because that's what's interesting here in our pursuit to actually understand what's real and what's fake in the days of Corona when we have lots of information overload and information noise. I'm going to talk about how we actually modeled doctors, medical doctors, that specifically deal with infectious diseases. So we actually began this process by finding a dozen of doctors. We found them manually. Okay, so here is an example of one of them. That's Lawrence Boston. Okay, and he's one of the handpicked seeds that we gave our algorithms. Using this seed, the algorithms went on to social networks and actually found many more people that are connected to our seed account and have meaningful interaction with them. And this allows us to build a model. For example, one of the people in the model is Scott Gottlieb. Probably some of you know him. He's the ex-FDA commissioner. He's a very important person in this community. His opinions really matter much. He's a real expert. And the next step that we have done in this model is actually to figure out what is the influence rank. Influence rank is another thing that we have invented in order to actually understand what's going on here. It's similar to what Google is doing with websites and page ranks. But in this case, we are measuring the influence level, how important each of those persons are, specifically within the model that we have created. So essentially, in this case, you can see that Scott has quite a lot of influence among his peers. So what he's saying has a lot of meaning to the other experts, which is a good sign because it allows us to say, oh, so it means that if he's saying something, it's probably important.
Indeed. So what we saw till now is the use of the platform to build models around the coronavirus pandemic, but actually the platform could be used to build key opinion leaders ecosystem in any domain and in different scopes. It could be used for executive in the telecom industry, cybersecurity experts, marketing or digital marketing officers, among financial community and so on. And in these types of models, we will see an ecosystem with different key opinion leaders, such as industry journalists, guys that are covering this industry, peers of the different executives. So it could be in the CMO example, other CMOs of similar industry leaders, influencers, media groups, NGO members, and so on. And of course, this will differ case per case. Generating in an automated, fast, and above all, trustworthy way, the most relevant stakeholders ecosystem in a specific domain would greatly help organizations in their communication efforts. And we will hear more about that as we proceed. Eran, please.
So the next step, now that we have a model, we found those hundreds of doctors that we're interested in, is actually to analyze the information flow, to really understand what are the pieces of information that they care about and which one they do not care about. So let's look at how this goes. Okay? The first thing we're going to do, okay, is calculate the newsworthiness. Newsworthiness is a way for us to measure how important a piece of information, in this case a tweet, or it might be a link, or it might be a website in general, okay, is actually important to the entire model, to the entire community. So in this case, it allows us to understand how all the experts, their combined wisdom actually is, at the end of the day, distilled into a single number. This allows us, okay, to actually do some very neat stuff. So, for example, we can find the unique topics those people care much about. You can see, for example, they care about Gilead and PCR and vaccination. Okay, of course, we compare it to the rest of the population, so we only see things that they care about that are different from the rest of the population. And next, it allows us to do some really interesting things like saying, okay, we're interested in remdesivir. It's the new drug that's supposed to be helping against the corona. We're going to find the interactions that receive the highest newsworthiness because those are most likely to be the correct one according to those hundreds of experts. And indeed, if we go into this specific interaction, instead, we just get one of the key leading doctors, okay, actually telling us exactly about what's going on with remdesivir, okay, in a very, very neat summary. So it's very helpful. We can now ignore all the noise, just read this piece of information because this is the correct one according to the combined wisdom of the expert. Now that we have the model and we analyzed it, the next step is actually to make recommendation. And specifically, we're going to show how we're going to algorithmically generate content based upon that. And in order to understand why this is important, okay, let's take a look at this website, which is updated daily. And it contains the information about the race for the cure based upon all the combined wisdom of the experts. So again, we modeled the people, we calculated their influence rank, we calculated the newsworthiness, and out of that we know which of the articles that are being shared are actually interesting and probably correct. So you can see what the doctors are saying about vaccine. Just to give you a sense why this is very important nowadays, if you actually go on Twitter and you search for coronavirus vaccine, one of the key pieces that you will find is this piece from Africa saying that Chinese have finally arrived to infect us all with the deadly corona vaccine. And of course, this kind of ability to algorithmically generate content which is based on the expert does not end with just doctors. As Gabriel was saying before, we can generate any pieces of content. In this case, it's a quiz about cybersecurity and privacy. We're actually relying on the expert of chief security officers in order to generate this piece of content. Gabi?
Yes. So to sum it up, the Corona model we just reviewed is actually a specific case of leveraging the platform capabilities for this very specific occasion, which we all hope soon will be like a long memory. But really the power of Cytea platform is actually in helping organizations in their external communication efforts. Organizations and corporates have realized that they cannot just provide their goods or services, but are expected by their consumers to take an active part in the bigger play of social responsibility, like gender equality, diversity, inclusion, sustainability, etc. And to participate in this game is a strategic choice of those organizations, but to execute it and to build their equity as key thought leaders in a certain domain is not a simple task. They need to know to whom they need to talk to, what to say, and then to invest a huge effort in generating content and distribute it ongoing. So having the ability to model the relevant key opinion leaders ecosystem, and then to sit on the flow of communication between the different stakeholders and get all the insights, trends, and the other interesting analysis, then to be able to participate in this conversation while having almost completely automatically generated relevant and trustworthy, as we saw, pieces of content is a huge, significant help in bringing this strategy to life and in a sustainable way. And this is really where the magic comes to life. And when we talk to different organizations And those organizations took indeed upon themselves the challenge to take part and to be actively involved in an ecosystem and to build themselves as some key thought leaders for a certain domain. This is where really they see the beauty which is there. You know, you need to try it in order to see how it comes to life. Thank you very much for the attention and hope to meet you at the backstage.
Thank you very much.
So now it's my honor and great pleasure to introduce you, Ria Persad. And I'm so happy, Ria, to have you with us together, that you have the time. Ria was born in Trinidad and Tobago, is of East India descent, and moved to the US as a small child. She's both a mathematician and a classical musician, and was a child prodigy. She currently mentors technology companies and is a climate scientist coordinating researchers teams globally. Sorry, my voice. Her life story has been featured by Opera, a documentary produced by award-winning filmmaker Robert Chung, follows her cutting-edge research in mitigating tropical cyclones. Ria is an author of the book All Things Are Possible, Unleashing the Superhuman Within. Besides all, she's also reigning Mrs. Grand Universe in 2018. Ria, the stage is yours, and thanks a lot for your contribution.
Thank you very much for that very gracious introduction. I appreciate that. I'm not using slides today. Usually I do use slides, but I just thought to do something a little bit different to make this a bit more approachable and more conversational. I'd like to thank SwissCognitive for this opportunity to present, and the entire dynamic team and all of the great work that they're doing in terms of bringing together the community so that we can really excel in our capabilities towards artificial intelligence. Dallas said earlier today that cognitive technology, which would include AI technology, is 10% humans and 90% or 10% technology and 90% humans, which I would agree with. And so what I'd like to just speak on today, maybe a little more informally, is on the role of humans in artificial intelligence. Because the white elephant in the room is, is AI going to just take away everyone's jobs? That's what everyone wants to know in terms of, more the population. And people want to know, is the computer just going to take over? And what specifically are we going to be looking at in the future? And there are various futurists who have written on this. And so certainly there is this incredible synergy between the capabilities of humans and the capabilities of machines, as it helps us to make systems that are more accurate, more resilient, more efficient, faster, higher capacity for data and processing, and doing things that we could have never done decades prior. So with all of this increase in quality of life, what we see is that the global economy itself is increasing. And by the global economy, it's not just measured completely in terms of financial reward, but also, this was something that we discussed rather in detail at the World Economic Forum in Davos, which is where I had met Dallas and Andy. By the economy, we're talking about the very quality of life for others. And I think that during this coronavirus pandemic, we're having to shift things from just a purely profit-driven perspective to a perspective that actually measures the quality of our lives, which is not necessarily a complete component of what the stock market is doing, or even how much financial gain there is. It's a bit of a shift. And so certainly the finances are important, but if cognitive technology can help us increase our quality of life. That's really ultimately what the goal is. And so in that regards, AI does have the power to transform not just our technological landscape, but our very economic future. And this is critical in the months and years to come. Of course, in light of this pandemic, should there be other pandemics, which probably there will be, and any other global economic interruptions. So here's the $1,000,000 question is, will artificial intelligence replace humans, or when we institute a system, what is the role of humans? So I'm just going to break it down into what I would refer to as 7 components of how humans are needed in AI. And it's a very nuts and bolts kind of way of thinking, but it helps us to learn how to leverage the talent with the technology. And so first of all, when we're building a system, as you know, we need to have systems that are based upon wisdom, knowledge discovery, even choosing what kinds of AI options are best. And so in the knowledge discovery process, it takes mathematicians, computer scientists, even visionaries to find out what works and what doesn't. The next thing would be testing the system once we've built that system. And that would be in the realm of your software engineers, people like that. So, there needs to be rigorous troubleshooting, making sure everything works under different real world scenarios. The next aspect is, how about monitoring that system? And I'm speaking all of this from the perspective of first person experience. I am CEO and founder of a company in artificial intelligence called StatWeather, and we use artificial intelligence to predict climate and weather. And so we were ranked as the #1 climate technology globally and have different accolades because AI can be used in this process. So this is all of the things that we've gone through in the last 10 years in developing our own systems and merging together machine with human. So as we're monitoring the system, I know in our company, we've had to certainly hire on data analysts so that they can provide the sanity checks to make sure that the system is continuing to do what it's supposed to do. The next step is debugging. And that is always a very huge task for computer programming, for computer programmers, where there are issues or breakdowns. And so there's also failure analysis, cause analysis. Then we have a backup system. What happens if the system doesn't work? What happens if you have a power outage? What happens if there are, a hurricane comes in and the system can't be used? Are there manual backups? Do we have? So it requires those kinds of system analysts and those kinds of human backups in place to meet those demands. Then we also have people like business analysts who can go in and get the customer requirements and see that deliverables from the system will match the customer's request. Because what we also see is that there is a lot of need for bespoke solutions. That's a part of digital transformation as well. And then we also need technical writers and analysts who can document this entire system, and people who can train others, that others can learn how the system works in case if changes need to be made, or in case if other employees come in and need to use that system. So what we see through this is that AI is not just a standalone process, but it requires an entire ecosystem of human skills to kind of flesh out what Daleth was saying at the very beginning, that AI is 90% humans and 10% machines. It can automate tasks, it can bring us computations and predictions at extraordinary speed, eliminating repetitious, manual, tedious jobs, but it also creates the opportunity for new, well-paying jobs from a technically skilled workforce. So I think that countries can leverage this information to build a relevant and a properly trained workforce. What I found when I go into universities and do various talks and presentations, and I speak to grad students and professors and people like that, is that there is actually a chronic disconnect between academia and the commercial sector. So in other words, there's a disconnect between what people are getting trained in and then the workforce that we're generating. I know that's certainly the case in the US and in a lot of Western countries, because sometimes they're operating in two different worlds, or they might be operating in a vacuum. So the needs have to be aligned, even in terms of our own children, as we look towards the future so that they can thrive in a digitally transformed society. Lastly, we know that there are also going to be traditional needs of a business for effective communicators, marketers, sales forces, financial experts, the media, savvy executives who can lead and operate a company. So these jobs are here to stay and they will not go away. AI can improve our lives, but with this rise in technology, it's most important to see the skills that are needed today that will help to propel us into our tomorrow. So thank you very much. We're going to transition over into our panel.
So now, Ria, please remain with us because we're going to start the panel. And the panel will be led by Antonio Russo. Antonio is head of Deloitte's Analytics and Cognitive Advisory in Switzerland and one of our strong SwissCognitive partners. Antonio will introduce the other panelists while we're bringing them on virtual stage.
Thank you very much, Dalit. So while we wait for the other panelists, I'll just give a quick intro. So good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to our panel session. AI, it's beyond technology. So my name is Antonio Russo. I will facilitate the session. I lead innovation for Deloitte here in Switzerland, and I also lead a team that looks after cognitive and analytics. So as we all know, AI is much more than technology. I think, Ria, you brought some perspective just now on this. And I think to make most of AI, we really need to consider a wide range of capabilities and requirements. And so I'm looking forward, to discuss this with the panel that we have today, and particularly what is required to really drive AI successfully. So I have a fantastic panel with me today, people with different backgrounds and experience, very rich. So really looking forward for a very lively conversation. So Ria, welcome to the panel. You've been introduced. Thanks for sharing some of your, really wide experience early on, and looking forward to discussing this topic with you. Our second panelist, just waiting for Umberto Michelucci to join. Umberto studied physics and mathematics. He's an expert in numerical simulation and statistics. He is currently responsible for deep learning, new technologies, and research at Telsana Insurance. So hopefully we can welcome Umberto very soon.
Umberto has difficulty to join, as well also Camille. Please go ahead.
All right, so Ria, that might be a conversation just between the two of us. And Camille, if he can join, he leads Unit 8 AI practice. So in his capacity, he collaborates with organizations to help them identify and adopt AI solutions. He advises companies on AI strategies and helping translate business problems into very concrete. Great. So Andy, I'll suggest we carry on, and Ria, let's just have a bit of a chat fire discussion then, chat conversation. So I'd like to touch on different dimensions, but maybe start with collaboration and capabilities. I think if you study a little bit how companies innovate and how they adopt new technologies, very often this comes into leveraging partnerships, whether it's within organizations or outside, working with startups, with alliance partners. I was really curious to have your perspective about, what does it take for organization and how would that collaboration manifest, and how easy or difficult it is really for organization to innovate outside their own four walls.
I have a wonderful example on this, just from my own experience. Over in the United States, we have NOAA, which is the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, which is a government-led organization. And within that, they actually have various public-private partnerships, and my company had engaged in a partnership with them. But I'll just tell you a little story, just a small little story. So about 8 years ago, I met a director from NOAA at a private sector conference on energy. And we were just kind of a younger startup at the time. But she said to me, her name was Jenny Disson, and she said, I think we need to have some kind of a campus where government, academia, and the private sector can come together to solve climate issues. And so, she thought of this, and then she said, can you write me up an executive summary of what you think such a partnership would look like? And so, we wrote that up, we drafted it out, and then a few years later, it came to pass. Now, when Jenny and I were talking, we were thinking maybe we would get 5 different companies in Asheville, North Carolina, where the National Climate Data Center was located. It ends up now they have 70 companies. So there are about 70 companies that are engaged with this campus, in addition to the government, in addition to the universities in North Carolina in the area, working on these big climate issues. And I think the thing to understand is that, first of all, these types of partnerships generally come about through somebody, through the work of like brainstorming, or, there's some brainchild, which in this case was Jenny Disson. I feel like I was just kind of, helping her along with that vision. And then it also requires just, building. There were philanthropists involved, just wonderful people in the community, because when you're tackling huge societal issues such as climate change, it really requires the whole community. It requires all of those talents. And we're seeing that now with COVID, where it's requiring the private sector, requiring the government. It's also requiring the universities. We're seeing technology coming out of MIT and, companies and government, seeing all of these entities working together.
Okay, excellent. Thank you, Rhea. And I guess probably the hardest is to start, right? I think once you engage, it's very easy, and I think as you illustrated in your example, it just scales because people see value.
Scales, yes.
Maybe just a follow-up question, and Camille and Umberto, welcome. I'm glad you made it through.
Yes, we've managed.
One observation, maybe, and keen to get your perspective. I think what we see, especially organizations. Maybe just a follow-up question, and Camille and Umberto, welcome. I'm glad you made it. I think if you can go on mute, thank you. It's very hard to drive innovation, especially now with the uptake of AI and data within the 4 walls of an organization. The immune system of the corporation would very quickly attack whatever new comes and whatever, great ideas might be. And then in one of the previous SwissCognitive events, we talked about the permafrost, which is, having a big ambition at the top. Leaders would understand, and they need to demonstrate and show that they are riding, the wave of innovation. People, maybe a generation, or millennials, that are more, digital natives, will definitely have big interest. But then there's this middle management, which is probably the single biggest blocker, because people are used to a different model, right? Is who you manage, how many people you manage. So I was curious, in your own respective experience, Camille, you as an advisor, and you, Umberto, driving innovation in your organization. How do you keep innovation immune from the antibodies of the organization?
Camille, you want to start?
Sure. Hi, everyone. Thanks a lot for having me here. And I guess, Antonio, to your question, I guess I'm carrying 2 different types of the experiences. One, having driven actually the internal innovation within a large corporate, and actually also exiting the corporate world to basically help run a startup environment. So you're super right that the bigger organizations tend to slow down the innovation if not managed properly. And I guess the recent example that I actually came across in Switzerland is the ideas of the innovation labs, or the D labs as the different parties call it. And it's basically still still an organization within the corporate world, but also which allows for the collaboration with the universities, which allows the collaboration with the startup environment. And this allows, I guess, a little bit more freedom to some of the innovative and digital native talent to actually run much quicker with the projects and with the innovation. And yet, at the same time, I mean, we need to ensure that those type of innovation zones, at the end of the day, do have the executive sponsorship and also are business relevant, right? Because they need to be close enough in order to generate value for the company, but also they need to be, I guess, far enough in order to be able to work in a little bit of the bubble to help incubate the new ideas.
Excellent, thank you. Umberto, any additions from your perspective?
Okay, now it's muted. Okay, can you hear me well now?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So what I think one of the main that you have innovation in big companies is the business case. Basically, one of the biggest problems, especially middle management, the people are used to work with business and are measured by business. That means that unless you can prove that what you're going to do is going to be good and you get more clients and you're going to get more money, you'll never get any support. Never risk like what they have for something that you cannot really measure. Because in my experience, especially innovation and new ideas, much more similar to research than to classical projects like software projects. And that means that you don't know exactly if what's coming out at the end is exactly what you're expecting. There is a lot of learning. And so the moment that you try to measure that by trying to predict how much money will cost and what options you have and the risk you have and all the classical business cases, it will be very difficult to do anything. And I think that one, it's a bit of the change in mentality and in incentives to do things that needs to change. Not only like, if the CEO or the CIO says, oh, we budget once they're all the same, now it will be very difficult. So what my experience, what has worked well, at least what we are trying to do is really trying to put some budget and start some experiments without having this high expectation. And that also with the acceptance that it can go very wrong. Then nothing can go
it's an excellent point, which brings me to my next question. I think there is definitely a problem with return on investment for innovation, right? You mentioned R&D, and I work a lot for pharmaceutical organizations. They have that issue, right? So I think there is research, and you can make a parallel. Research can be your startup phase, but then you need to scale it up, right? And this is where potentially you make money or drive an impact. Into what you just mentioned, I think there's an element about how innovation is driven from, let's say, a culture and a methodology standpoint. Okay? So going into more agile, where maybe the scope is not clear, but you give you give a given capacity, budget for people to innovate. And that's not very intuitive for people, because people are very deterministic. They want to know how much money I'm going to give you, your point about I'm going to get at the end. So it's very hard to shift the mindset for people to say, I'm going to invest money, and what I give people, what I put together essentially is capability and effort for a period of time. And then, of course, the direction of travel. And then I iterate in an agile way. I also think on measurement, it's very important what you measure at which point in time. So I work for a large corporation, and I know if I try to measure too many things too early, I would just kill any great ideas. But
I agree with you.
At some point, you need that view about the return on investment. So what I was curious to hear from the team here is, if you think about ways of working, methods, culture as well, goes hand in hand. What's your experience of traditional waterfall versus more agile, and how effectively organization can really put through agile team, multidisciplinary, drive innovation. I don't know, maybe Ria, you want to start?
I'll wait till.
You've been just unmuted.
Okay, wonderful. What we found through innovation is that we as entrepreneurs have to find those early adopters, those people who are our advocates within a corporation or within some type of company, within the people who fund these types of technologies. And that's not always an easy process, but you see, when you're a young company, it's like finding your tribe. You know, I mean, who are those people who we can link with, who will support us? And that might only be that 1 in 100, you know, that you're going to talk to. So it does require going to these conferences or whatever, you know, talking to a lot of people, really find who can help catapult us and to create those synergies to take us to the next level, take us from the early adopter stage into more mainstream cases that we can reach the mainstream business. So it is a process and it does take time. And so I think it really is a lot of legwork, a lot of what in the US we call the hustle of finding those people. Because when we have an innovation, we'll have to a certain degree the use case, but I think that the entrepreneurial journey is always going to be just that. It's going to be a journey of constantly learning and of constantly proving out your technology and constantly shifting your technology. The customer demands that you never knew were even there, that only became exploited because you were out there on the field engaging with those customers.
Yeah, and I think that we had great learnings from startups, right? Who are very good at pivoting very quickly from the original idea by engaging customer and trying to understand. So very often what you have in mind in the beginning might not be what you land as a product, and we just discuss later. So if you truly work agile, you believe in the capabilities and the direction of travel, and you adopt a certain methodology to pivot quickly, then I think the likelihood of success is much higher. But I think traditional corporation, in my experience, really struggle with that because they're used to deterministic waterfall. I give you a budget, we'll see you in a few months, and I want an outcome. So you want to add something more?
Yes, I think what you're saying is right. And the trend that we, have been seeing like in Silicon Valley and places like that is that the corporations are doing more acquisitions. And so, they're saying, okay, the whole, like the method of Bell Labs and these big, we have our own R&D. Okay, it could take you 10 years to develop that R&D and you have all of this investment. When a startup over here has already developed it, I can just snap them up for $10 million and get all their programmers.
Yeah.
And, use the Google model. And so you have the Acquihire acquisition. And so we're seeing that companies, a lot of these guys, it's not just the internal process, but they're looking out there to see who they could bring in.
Yeah, and your competition is not always who you think it is, right? Umberto,
I think this is...
Sorry, Camille, please.
I was just going to follow up on what was just mentioned, right? I mean, that idea of the kind of open ecosystem, the ability to quickly react to the market changes and also to bring in the external innovation is actually quite key because a lot of the companies that are out there are not digital natives, right? Some of those companies are just adopting some of the latest technologies. And I think that ability to quickly react to the market, pull in the right projects, the right innovation, the right ideas as well from the market is quite critical to success as well.
Excellent, Umberto. Any perspective from your side?
Yeah, I also think that it's also a question of the risk you want to take. I mean, the big companies typically also are used to classical software that you can know what you're going to do, and it's going to take maybe 3 months, 6 months, 1 year, and then you're done. And that's a big assumption. And it's what many companies, especially big companies, the amount of efforts and time, as Ria was mentioning, that you have. So you never stop learning. You learn what people by trying using that in of your clients. And so unless you really start a journey that you started, It's not, for me, innovation is not something, oh, well, we do it for 6 months and we have our product. That's already wrong from the start. So you have really to say, we want to invest there, and we know that it's difficult. And that's one point. That is a journey never started. The second point that I think is absolutely fundamental is that the complexity of the problem we have innovation is so big that you'll never be able to use it, because you'll never be able to. And along the way, you will surely things will change, because you will start using stuff, and conditions will change. Those will change. People will start using and start expecting more, because maybe you are used from Apple to use and quality of Apple. So unless you deliver the same quality, suddenly it's completely different. So this is why this journey. Yeah.
Okay, excellent. So before closing, maybe another pivoting to another topic. So I think, the topic is, AI beyond technology. I think I'm really surprised about how few organizations have ethics fully embedded in what they do. Yeah, it boils down to a later stage quick check about, we thought about, data privacy and so on and so forth. And I guess the question is, what to do when, if you think, moving from an idea to, having a solution in place and delivering value and impact.
Yeah.
And curious to hear about your own experience around ethics and seeing reorganizations embedding this, already in the design phase. So, design, as opposed to then retrofitting in which it's too late and then just delaying things.
So maybe I can say just a few words and then I leave the others time. For example, what I'm trying is to initiate, I think that ethics defines what a company, or how a company, what the values of a companies are. And I think that the values of a company, the products, I don't think that you can separate the two. I mean, Google, don't be evil and stuff like that. So I think what we're trying to do, for example, is I'm trying to define some basic principles that we should discuss before deciding to start any AI initiative. Because you can do lots of things technically, but it doesn't mean you should do it, right? Or you maybe decide to do it depending on the company. You decide to implement stuff that will get people fired because you get more efficient, or you may decide not to do it because you want jobs. So I think that it's not even in the design, and in the question of what the consequences or the possible consequences are or initiatives that you have to continuously discuss. I don't think it's just a phase at the beginning. I think it's just a phase along the way. We have tried something, we've learned something, but we're not, because we have learned that the consequences are there. So I think it's a continuous part of the process.
If I may add to that, because I think the question is actually very important, and in my take, it's going to actually even grow in importance. Because at the end of the day, I don't think there was any other time in our history where engineers actually had such a massive impact on all of the society, right? If you think about it, some of the latest innovations, some of the Facebooks, the Googles of the world, right, were created by youngsters that might not have kind of the fully developed ethics compass. And quite often we also see on the market approaches like move fast and break things, right? I mean, can we allow that type of behaviors in a long run? So my take, I think, is that we need to look at the problem, I would say, holistically, right? Meaning it should be probably debated whether or not the ethics should be part of the engineering curriculum, so that you actually start in school and maybe embed some of the proper behaviors. And then most of the organizations actually have a code of business conduct. Some of the organizations have, let's say, the data code of conduct. Maybe it's also time to think about something like ethics code of conduct at the level of the entire organization. And then as well at the actual project level, right? Should that be kind of taken into account when designing the project? So like you mentioned, Antonio, at the very beginning, I guess by design, the ethics should be built into the project. So I guess the three different lenses, but a very growing type of the debate that's ahead of us on the problem. Back to you, Antonio.
Yes, and I guess there is an internal and external dimension, right? I think Umberto, you also mentioned it has to start from the company values. I fully agree, right? You know, things don't happen by accident. They have to be embedded into a purpose and why you exist. But I think there's also an external dimension, right? And particularly regulators who are still trying to figure out really what it means and how much they can impose from the outside.
Yeah.
Supposed to rely on, you know, codes of conduct. And I think
No, sorry. I just wanted to say that I think it goes beyond regulation. You know that I don't know if you like philosophy, but like moral philosophy, there is a classical discussion if consent changed the morality of an action. So even if people are consenting of you using the data, doesn't mean it makes it good, right? So I think that regulator is very important point, but I think companies can do a lot more than just simply abiding at the laws. And I think that it makes a lot of difference in trust and in what people think about companies if they make those principles transparent. And it's not only like with AGB of 10 pages where in a small fonts is written that they can use the data for whatever they like. It's a lot more than that.
Ria, any thoughts from your side?
Thank you. Well, certainly, this is a very, very significant topic because ethics permeates every part of the business and its impact upon society. So starting with the ethics of the founders themselves and the founding of the company and what their vision is, also the corporate governance within a company, but then the ethics surrounding the technology itself, and then also the ethics in terms of its impact upon the customer and upon society. So there are different ethical schema and frameworks dominating different parts of that entire business cycle and also on society. And I think it's really interesting to see what's happening in other emerging technology spaces, such as the blockchain space, where we see, you know, all of this kind of debate surrounding the blockchain technology with cryptocurrencies and things like that throughout the world. And as technology continues to mature and develop, I think, you know, there are two things. One thing about ethics is that when we develop something, maybe ethics is something that you're kind of making a forecast, what could come up or what would come up, or maybe not. So it's hard to tell what kinds of doors that technology is going to open or what kinds of cans of worms that technology is going to open. That's what gets revealed. And so we as technologists just go about and we create what we create. Generally, you know, that startup from the standpoint of the founders' perspective of the world, if you will. And then as time goes on, there will certainly be more and more things that we consider. And I'm seeing more conferences emerge on the topics of like AI and ethics or blockchain and cybersecurity, all these types of things, as we really get to see kind of in hindsight what needs to be done going forward based upon issues that are coming up for the human experience.
A great perspective. I think we can make a parallel with the value. I guess there is also a point about what you need to have clarity or decide on at which stage. So I give a recent example, you know, working with my team on building a solution that might require patient consent. Okay, so it's around health. And I know if I bring that point, now it's at idea level. I know if I bring it now, the idea will be killed right away. Right. So I think it's the same thing as the value discussion we had earlier. I think that there is a bit of an art here to, answer the right questions at the right time in your innovation cycle. Otherwise, you really incur a risk of, losing great ideas and, start getting the ball rolling. So, and it has to start with purpose and why you exist as a firm. Great. No, thank you very much, everybody. I'd just like to close with one word each one of you. 4 minutes? Okay, so you can elaborate on the one word I'm going to ask you about. So, the topic is AI, it's beyond technology, and I think probably technology is the easiest part. And, it moves so fast anyway, exponentially, that, almost by the day, it's going to get easier, the technology side. So I was keen to hear from you, one word, what do you think is really hindering AI scale and be more successful in most organizations? One single factor, and maybe we have 3 more minutes to articulate why you think that's the biggest hindering factor in successfully.
Okay, I can start. Nobody wants to start. I think, there are many factors, but if I have to choose one, I think is really one of the things that I see every day is the missing know-how. So not understanding how complex problems are and underestimating what it means to do those kind of things and to solve those kind of problems and collaboration models. And so the science behind it. And the fact that now there are several science fields that are starting to come together suddenly. AI is not a field by itself. It's a lot of mathematics and then and the algorithms. And I think it's the first time where we are seeing that in such a scale. And I think that the complexity of such problems and such models is so big that people are underestimating and thinking that it can be done in a couple of months, and then they fail.
Underestimated complexity.
Yeah.
Camille?
Happy to go next. So I've made a note that what I would say would be misaligned expectations, meaning what AI can do, what AI cannot do. Going back to the points that you've mentioned before, the ROI on an AI, right? Not to measure it in a short term, but actually have a longer perspective. Because I truly believe AI can be a game changer, but it requires the right culture, the right methodology, the right environment to flourish. So 2 words: misaligned expectations.
No, I like it, and I like to combine the two. There's a sentence I love to use with my clients, which is inflated expectation, underestimated complexity. So you got to work on both. Be very realistic about what can be done, but also, be realistic about the maturity and the capability. Ria, we're closing with you. Final thoughts on what's blocking?
I think that a great key to unlocking the innovation and the scalability of that innovation is the word need, N-E-E-D, that we identify if something is actually a need. Do we need self-driving cars? We develop these technologies, but if no one actually needs it, then we have a problem. And I find that, and I'm just being candid, with those of us, including myself, who are eggheads, mathematicians, we develop all this really cool stuff, and then it just stays in the lab because nobody really needs it. So I think that we need to identify that entire human component of what is the need and develop to that.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Ria, Umberto, and Camille. I really enjoyed the conversation. I hope it was also interesting for our participants, and looking forward to further interaction.
Thanks to all of you. Thanks, Antonio, for this great moderation. Thanks, Ria, Camille, and Umberto, for joining us. And thanks to the audience. I must say, I get really touched to see how much people interact in our chats, comment. Now it's my great pleasure to introduce our next speaker on our virtual stage. Huw Kwon is a global head of AI for the AI analytic practice at Cognizant, who is also a strong partner of SwissCognitive. Huw previously worked for McKinsey, where he led global AI project and advised C-suites clients across industries as a senior associate partner. Prior to McKinsey, he built and led data science and analytics co-Es at Accenture, EY, and Lloyds Banking Group. At Cognizant, who leads the AI offering in Europe across data modernization, customer intelligence, and operational intelligence. He also sits on the global AIA leadership team and provides leadership at global level for the development of our intelligence offering and strategy. So it's great to have you on stage and to benefit from your experience and insights. The virtual stage is yours.
Hi, everyone, and good afternoon for most of you, and good morning for some. Now, I had the pleasure, especially for the past 3 years, serving and advising our C-level executives, and I counted them, and I've reached almost 100 C-level executives, and I advise them, and we discuss them problems on the matter of AI and using AI to make business impact. So today's talk is that, and in light of COVID as well, I try to make this talk really experience-based, as well as I try to make it a bit light. So let me share my screen, walk you through my learning. So if I summarize the recent years' experience, what I've heard from my client executives, it's summarized like this. We've created our own data science and AI COE, executed many, many use cases, but now none of them are able to provide business value. What do I do here? Do I disband them? Do I send them back to their product areas? What do I do? So that's one of the very recent question that came out from banking executive from one of the European main bank. And another thing is, we've succeeded in many POCs, but I don't know why, but it doesn't scale. It's very difficult to scale an industry. What did you do wrong? And lastly, Huw, we created the data lake. No one is using it except few data scientists. And to be honest with you, Huw, it's more like a data swamp rather than a data lake. It's a total mess. So, as with the title, what went wrong? What did you do wrong over here? And I've been led AI projects for about 20 years. I try to put some of the things that you shouldn't do in order to make impact using AI. And there are a couple of pitfalls, and I try to make make it a bit fun for all of us. So number one fail. So it's the nerds winning. So if you see this on a page, you will see in order to make impact using AI, you have to get the source of value, data modeling correct, classification modeling correct, and applying it to the business and integrating it with the business to have that end-to-end value realized. But if you get that nerds win, what happens is the nerds will do their best to come up with the best classification model, whatever that is, right? And you will often hear things like, whether that's your internal team or external team consultants, they'll say, "Oh, we've achieved 90% of Gini curve or ROC. It's amazingly accurate model." But that is where it ends. When you actually, for example, if this is a banking retention model, let's say you can predict 90% of customers who are about to leave your bank or leave that product, and you can predict it with 90% Gini accuracy model. But then how are you going to execute it? What are you going to do about it? It almost is a separate project. And I think earlier on in today's talk, we discussed a lot about this challenge about analytical model being one thing, and the next impact, really where the IQ and EQ transition happen is when you apply that model back to the business, i.e., you can't just apply it back to the business and give the model a score to the business. You actually have to understand who does the retention calls and who executes that in the bank for it? And in the real project example, it was a call center people. And using that model, you should actually go as far as writing the scripts per different reason groups and segments to accurately target them and offer the retention offer to retain them, and also based on them. And this is not a trivial matter. But rewinding back, as many of you have had these kind of project execution experience, we normally only expect all this to happen at the third classification modeling stage, when and data scientists come with heralding with 90% accuracy. But there is second bit, a lot more important, to really work with not data scientists, ideally alone, but with other people, business people, as well as CRM experts, as to how to use that strong model to make business impact and how to integrate. And this is one of the things that we really shouldn't forget in order not to. So the next one, AI worshippers. I think a couple of us also mentioned this quite frequently today. This happens with those people who I think has misconception of what AI really is, and think AI is a panacea for solving everything. This, as we know, doesn't happen. AI, which works this day and age, is a narrow AI, not wide AI. Generic wide AI doesn't exist, as far as I know, and in my experience. So in that narrow AI, we again have to really home into that source of value and implement it to the business. But those so-called AI worshippers will put this the value expectation so high, everything that comes after it is just downhill. And especially when it comes to applying that back to the business. The rocket that went so high up will come down and create a disastrous meeting when it comes to applying it back. I think quite a lot of us experience this, for example, under the name of RPA and AI-led RPAs, and where the value was very limited. And there's nothing that RPA does automatically. You had to redo the whole work process design. And fail 3 is so-called unicorn believers. You got this amazing guy on CV and you onboarded them. You got that person to do the source of value, data modeling, classification modeling, all throughout, and applying it to the business. And when you try to integrate it with the business, that person has disappeared or didn't exist. This is half joking, half serious over here. But the point over here I want to make is there is no unicorn data scientist or AI scientist. And it is because there is no one human being who can do all the singing and dancing and everything, identifying the commercial business value, as well as being able proficient in all the AI methodology, as well as data engineering, let alone data science, and integrating that back into whatever business system it is. It just doesn't exist. And let's just assume you have recruited such rock star unicorn, and you're very lucky to have that kind of person. I think the question to ask is, why would they work for you? Why would they work for us? Shouldn't they be in Silicon Valley, on hundreds of millions of VC funds? So unicorn unbelievers, please, let's break this and get real. And I'll share how to overcome this barrier or difficulty in order to in the following. So, and this is now fail number 4 happens a lot with the organizations, which is quite large and is dependent on legacies. They got the source of value correct, and when it comes to the data modeling, oh my goodness, source system, where the data comes from, streaming data, non-streaming data, batch data, raw data. And by the time it comes to classification modeling, applying it to business, you basically run out of time and money. And this happens a lot. So if it stops after data modeling, at least I think we will fail fast and have a learning in an organization. But this actually, in reality, ends up getting the data scientists to do minimal work on classification modeling. So you end up building a very shoddy AI model and applying it business, same thing, same. Okay. And now, fail number 5 is, I call this analytic cartoon syndrome, which I think is a very serious illness. And it happens both on the data scientist or AI scientist level, as well as on the client side. So what I mean by that is analytics or AI trying to or do this right is a very difficult thing, right? Even let's just say on the algorithmic side, it requires minimum PhD to properly understand not all, maybe some of the areas, and getting that kind of PhD, doctorate person to do a data engineering is also no joke. And data engineering over here, in order for AI to work, it is not just merging data and cleaning data and doing exploratory data analysis. In order to make AI to scale and industrial, we really have to have that data model productionized in the background. So can you do that? Can a data scientist, a PhD graduate do that? Again, I've rarely seen happen in reality. So you almost need a division of the paper to get AI projects really done. And also, from the client or the project management side, the client side or the project leaders or analytical heads even, they have this oversimplification of what analytic is. You feel like you know it, and you've done some quantitative degrees, and I think the reason is, to be fair to them, it's not because they are arrogant. I think analytic is very, very logical thing, right? AI end to end. So logically it's understandable, but being able to do it end to end from data architecture, platforming, data engineering, data science algorithms, applying it to the business, and making impact is no easy matter, albeit logically. Okay, so quickly moving on. This is the ideal state, right? All the effort, maximum on source of value to making business impact. But this is not possible, but it is possible, realistic, with people, process, and technology. I will share you very quickly. And people, it has to be a pod. It has to have minimum of 3 combination, if not more, of specialists coming together to do this together. Data engineer, data scientist, and business translator has to come together to make AI impact in business. And process-wise, there is over here 1 to 5, no AI project development ever goes outside this. This is my testament and experience of my 20 years of experience. Identifying the source of value correct, getting the data ecosystem correct, whether that's internal or external, then modeling and impact delivery to the business and making that work and being adopted at business. Do you have this playbook? Do you have this process set? Do you follow this? If you miss any of them or reduce the importance in any one of them, the impact will be lessened. And lastly, the technology, the platform. This is Google's paper. The black dot in the middle is machine learning, the so-called AI element. All the rest of it is platform configuration, data collection, feature extraction, feature engineering, data verification, etc. This page, I will leave it with you. Are you doing it not the other way around? And that is the wrong way of doing AI. In order to make AI, and as you see it over here, and this is digital native, Google says this, the box is even larger. So I'll skip the banking examples. The summary is, I will leave with you, is do you have the AI people in a pod format run in Agile to deliver AI projects? Do you have the AI to impact process and playbook in place? Did you modernize your data and platform? Or are you still in your own system or specialized narrow system, which will be extremely limited? Nowadays, I'm not particular to any platform providers, but you have the three main ones without having to name them. That is the way forward in order to scale an industry. So thank you very much. That is my presentation. And if there are any further questions and if you've got any further queries, please feel free to contact me.
Great, and thanks a lot, Huw. Again, a very interesting speech. We do have a question. Huw, you can see them also in the Q&A. Nevertheless, I will read it quickly. In patent law, we currently have recently had a case of AI designated as inventor in a patent application, which was ultimately rejected. How are such attempts perceived at this time?
So if I understand the question carefully, so you did an innovation and it got rejected. Is that at patent office or at a company level?
Good question. Kimani, can you elaborate more on your question directly in the chat, please? Suggest that you will take one-to-one with Huw and discuss that. It's a bit difficult to find out the level of the question now.
Yeah. So maybe I'm not answering directly, but very quickly on innovation. So if you can achieve the state of innovation in your company via data science, AI engineer, by all means, encourage patenting it. And of course, yeah, some of it might get accepted, and some of it will be pending. Some of it will get rejected. But I think innovation on a small way, very good. But I think the objective of a company really is to make business impact using AI to reduce the cost, sell more, automate it more, make operation a lot more smoothly running.
And I really hope to have you with us in the future again. And now it's my great pleasure to introduce you the next speaker. The next speaker actually is Angelica Sirotin, and she represents the Gen Z. So Angelica is an upcoming venture entrepreneur, founder, and Gen Z digitalization expert. She serves as the official Gen Z digitalization advisor to Going Global Venture, where actually Mark Minovich, a close friend of ours, is there too. Angelica is one of the selected few leading voices that is providing insights on her generation in the critical areas of digital transformation, AI, and the future of work. Her insights on Gen Z have previously been published in Information Week magazine, and she regularly published her novel perspectives as part of her Gen Z digital transformation focused magazine, The Angelica Factor. Angelica is also the executive producer and co-host of the Digital Pioneers Dialogue podcast, a show featuring insights from top global AI industry leaders. She's also a 2017 recipient of the National Academy of Future Scientists and Technologists Award of Excellence. Thanks, Angelica, for sharing with us your thoughts and your experience Because at the end of the day, whatever we're doing here, we're doing this for the younger and coming generation. The virtual stage is yours.
Thank you so much for the kind introduction. I'm really excited to present about Generation Z and the impact on the global economy. And I have a presentation prepared, so let me just quickly share my screen here with everyone. And we're going to this. So we're going to be talking about Gen Z and the global economy, essentially, and I've prepared this presentation for you all. So Generation Z is becoming an increasingly prevalent force within our global economy, and they have one mission on their mind, and that is societal transformation. Because the digital future and transformation lies with Generation Z, we must understand who they are, what they want, and properly engage them in order to accelerate global digitalization. So who is Gen Z? This demographic was born during the specific period of 1997 to 2012, and industry reports show that they constitute over 1/4 of the global population and workforce. Because Gen Z was born into a period of digital transformation, 3 key characteristics define this generation, each of which have major implications for the digital economy, and these characteristics are shown on the presentation as well for reference. First and foremost, Gen Z is the first true digital native generation. Having evolved alongside the internet era, social networks, and other technological developments, we rapidly embraced digital solutions. We became outspoken advocates of this new societal augmentation and optimization, and therefore came to know only one kind of world, and that is the digital world. Because of this, we expect all actors within this world, such as enterprises, to be digitally inclined and mature. The digital-first mentality that is ingrained within Gen Z also naturally predisposed us to become AI natives, as we see that vast potential for societal transformation that artificial intelligence brings. And we expect all enterprises to be AI-driven as a result. And within Gen Z's push for an AI-powered reality, the emphasis is on a transformative, ethical, and explainable AI geared for human good. This specific drive is influenced by the fact that Gen Z was born into a highly unstable period, characterized by a post-9/11 and 2008 Great Recession reality, which pushed us to search for answers, promote accountability, and understand the importance of the human-centric approach in order to remain resilient. We believe that AI is the key to unlocking this human resiliency. And taking these key Gen Z traits into account, we can now move into the conversation that surrounds engaging Gen Z in the digital economy. Successful engagement of Gen Z comes in the form of 2 key areas: a deep understanding of transformation and social impact, both of which work together and are not mutually exclusive. Transformation is considered a Gen Z core value, and as such, enterprises must anticipate us to enter the workforce prepared to bring about actionable change. Our transformative mindset will push us to seek workplace environments in which we can innovate and pioneer solutions. This means that we will champion and largely dominate the role of Chief Digital Officer across enterprise sectors. Building upon this, companies that prioritize the CDO position will be viewed as forward-thinking by Gen Z, and we will look up to these firms as true digital leaders. This fact is crucial, as an overwhelming 91% of Generation Z said technological sophistication would impact their interest in working at a company, according to Next Generation speaker Ryan Jenkins. In the enterprise world of Gen Z, digital first is not enough. In order to truly engage Gen Z, companies must display evidence of a concrete digital transformation agenda. In addition to digital maturity, there is another side to transformation that Gen Z prioritizes, and that is culture. An inclusive workplace and employers that implement clear guidelines for accountability and ethics are key engagement mechanisms for the true generation. In fact, 77% of Generation Z said that a company's level of diversity affects their decision to work there, as per Ryan Jenkins. Gen Z's emphasis on accountability and an inclusive cultural framework has massive implications when it comes to fast-tracking and enterprise implementations of explainable AI and responsible AI applications. We further recognize the fact that without transparency and inclusivity, even digitally inclined firms can fail in responsible and explainable AI initiatives. This truly encapsulates the Gen Z forward-thinking approach, and this leads me into the topic of Gen Z as a truly purpose-driven social impact generation. Generation Z feels this obligation to provide a purpose-driven impact on the globe, a sentiment and feeling that was shaped by our upbringing in digitalization and witnessing really the evidence firsthand of how digital solutions augmented our personal human experience. As a result of this, we have become determined and motivated for the digitalization of today that we are experiencing to provide the same positive impact that we experienced during our early development. Therefore, it goes without saying that social impact is another Gen Z core value that serves as a key motivator in both our hiring and purchasing decisions. In fact, 93% of Generation Z said that a company's impact on society affects their decision to work there, according to Ryan Jenkins. 83% of Gen Zs consider a company's purpose when deciding where to work, according to Sustainable Brands, and a study by WP Engine found that 69% of Gen Z consumers are more likely to buy from a company that contributes to social causes. So combining the key areas of transformation and social impact, it is entirely evident that in order to successfully engage Gen Z in the digital economy, enterprises must embody a digitally transformative approach that leverages culture, accountability, and AI solutions to carry out the greater purpose and mission of social impact and a forward-thinking, human-centric approach. Through the potent combination of transformation and social impact, Gen Z is already reinventing traditional innovation in a way that reflects the digitalization-first mentality. But where exactly is Gen Z driving the next frontier of digital innovation? 4 key themes come to mind, including sustainability, education, AI for good, and digital social impact. Perhaps one of the most outspoken advocates for global sustainability has been a Gen Z member herself, Greta Thunberg, who has mobilized one of the biggest environmental movements in modern history. This has accelerated international efforts towards digital-focused sustainability solutions, which will have significant implications for the creation of a true human-centric framework. Advancements in education have also seen a major boom in progress due to the coronavirus crisis. In the midst of this turmoil in academics, which has impacted Gen Z the most, we have exhibited resilience. Rather than falling back upon the old university structure, we have become major proponents of a skills-based approach, which will serve as a defining element of the future digital economy. The alteration in mentality that has already induced a global paradigm shift in the context of education and digitalization, and this is important in creating a future in which human skills will be valued more than ever before, thus helping us to formulate a truly human-centric economy. In addition to this theme, the drive towards a people-oriented digital framework promulgated by Gen Z has boosted progress in AI for good applications and digital social impact, specifically bringing to light the need for personalized solutions and reinventing the enterprise model to focus on culture, inclusion, diversity, and accountability as required precursors for all AI applications. Because Gen Z will mandate these factors as part of enterprise policy, social impact will shift from mere suggestion to codified law and will solidify the human-centric economy. To conclude, our future, our digital future, is in the hands of Gen Z. Digitalization of the world is inevitable, but in order to fast-track this agenda, we must equip Gen Z with the tools and environment that they need in order to carry out actionable societal transformation and lead the global economy in ushering in the new human-centric digital framework. Thank you so much, everyone, for tuning in, and I really hope that this presentation on Gen Z will better help to understand where we can drive them in the global digital economy and what we need to do in order to set them up for success and to have a truly human-centric future that we are all so talking about and having such big conversations on, as we have seen throughout the course of this presentation. So thank you so much for the opportunity.
Thank you very much, Angelica. I think it's very important to have some insights, especially from your side. Now, we got some questions. I would like to read it. You can see them in the Q&A yourself. The one is, social impact, including climate change, is actually a reduction of consumption. How can AI help with this?
We believe that Gen Z, when you're talking about climate change, we believe that it can help to stimulate more conversation regarding models. So really taking into account environmental tracking and environmental monitoring. For example, something that we even do today is we do environmental tracking of our water contamination, of pollution. These are things that we do manually, and these are processes that we have to keep in check, because if we don't, then we're going to have problems with environmental monitoring, not having proper water supply. We're going to have contamination issues. So we are very much keeping in track various climate issues on a manual scale, but we believe that AI implementations and being able to track these patterns can help to stimulate a conversation regarding climate change and really seeing how our climate is adapting as time goes. So the thing is, we are doing these things, like I just said, we are checking environmental monitoring, but we believe that artificial intelligence can help to augment this process. Perhaps it's not going to be the end-all be-all solution to climate change, but it can certainly bring about pattern identification and can help us look in the right direction with regards to solutions.
Thanks a lot. Another question is focusing less on the company side, how companies can be attractive or attract the Gen Z, but how can government and public services attract the best talents?
Absolutely. So government and policy is going to be very instrumental for Generation Z. The number one way to engage with us is to really understand the fact that we are focused on the human, on social impact, and on the good of society. So in order for government initiatives to start to see Generation Z interest, there needs to be programs that are focused on societal good. So for example, promoting giving up data for good willingness. For example, we are more likely than other generations to give up our data in order to help artificial intelligence solutions, create truly human-centric solutions. Another thing that we can do is empower women. Something that Generation Z is very forward-thinking. It is empowering women to enter the workforce, and just generally various programs, and also diversity, various minority groups in the United States that are largely excluded from various programs. And this can be done by having government policies that are really inclusion first, diversity oriented, and have a focus on women and all other demographics within our society, because we realize that in order to truly unlock the full digitalization capacity and human potential of our economy, everybody needs to be included. So the best way to engage Gen Z is to really focus on programs that focus on social impact and an inclusion first approach.
Can you elaborate a little bit more also from the ethical perspective?
Yes, absolutely. So one of the key core values that Generation Z is associated with is the fact that the true generation, and I'm talking about the truth because something that we very much value is honesty and transparency and responsibility. And these things all build into creating an ethical framework, making sure that things are kept in check. And again, as I was stating earlier, this was influenced by our early upbringing and into instability, really wanting to make sure that things are approached in a responsible way. And the responsible approach naturally feeds into ethics and what is right. So we are constantly on this journey and quest to figure out what is right and how to do things and not to harm people. And in order to do this correctly, we need to make sure that we have ethical guidelines in place. And this is something that we're going to champion because as we go into the future, which is wildly unknown right now, we're in a very unstable coronavirus time, we need to make sure that people are held accountable and that responsibility measures are in place. And we believe that ethics is an augmentation of this because ethics will tell us what is right, what can we do to uplift our population. And this is why artificial intelligence plays such a big role in this and why we will champion ethical AI, because we need to make sure that all implementations are for the human and making sure that no harm is done along the way. So it's very much a generational preference that Generation Z shares and upholds. And this is why we will popularize and largely champion the ethical approach to artificial intelligence, because it's just something, the responsibility and accountability that is so ingrained in our mentality that it's impossible to have any other AI but one that is ethical.
Another question is, what are the economics play field for Gen Z?
Yes, absolutely. So this is an interesting conversation. I would say that Generation Z very much thinks in terms of welfare economics, meaning that we care more about the human and we care more about the ability to innovate within the economy than even getting a raise at a company, which sounds counterintuitive, but it's this whole pioneering mindset. You know, there's academics and researchers who they fall in love with their work, they fall in love with their careers. They don't care about their raises. They want to keep investing in their research. This is kind of the mentality that Generation Z embodies. What we want is we want an economy that's kind of a support economy that works towards the human. And so you will see us investing in sectors that have true social impact. So entertainment is something that we could go without. But entertainment in the facet of personalization and uplifting the human experience is something that we would very much be interested in investing in the personal economy. Same thing with personalized health, which is becoming a very big topic. So when Generation Z is approaching the economy, our purchases and our decisions are largely made with the key motivating decision of social impact. So if I buy this item or I buy this product or service from a company, how is it going to have a positive impact on society? It's very much a collective mentality rather than an individualistic mentality. So it plays into the whole welfare economics of, if I participate in this way, how will my purchase, how will my consumer decision affect the next person next to me, or just in general, the demographic? So this is the approach, and it's very interesting because it's different from generations previous. So it's very much my decision, how is it going to affect others? And this is how Generation Z makes.
Great. Thanks a lot, Angelica. Again, I think it's one of the most important things that we include the younger generation more and more, because whatever decision we're taking, it affects your life and not ours. So saying that, I would really like to go on with the discussion with you and also involve through you more of your generation and give them a voice also through SwissCognitive. And what I would also like to mention again is this project that we're doing now about listening to the voice of the civilian and see where and why and how they're actually accepting the technical development and everything that comes with it. So thanks a lot. Whoever wants to reach out to Angelica, please go into the backstage or ask for one-to-ones. It was really great having you with us on this virtual stage. Stay healthy and see you hopefully soon also in person.
Thank you very much. It was my pleasure.
Welcome. Now, it's my great pleasure to introduce you to our next speaker. Our next speaker is actually Olivier Deken, who is our Managing Director and representative of SwissCognitive Hub Belgium, what is the first hub outside Switzerland that we're building. So we're very proud to have you with us. Olivier is the CTO of Twikit. And there he's guiding the company on a technological level with computer visioning, geometrical manipulations, and AI. He has a PhD and a postdoc and derived algebraic geometry from the University of Antwerp. He's a researcher on cheek reconstruction at Novi Biocare, where he actually first got into contact with machine learning and AI. Olivier is a researcher on predistortion techniques for satellite communication at NewTek, as well as a 3D and image AI applications at Twicket. Olivier, the stage is yours. Thanks a lot for sharing with us your insights.
Right. Thanks a lot, also Dalit and Andy, for the opportunity for me to talk here. So, hi everybody. My name is Olivier de Deken. I am, as Dalit said, the CTO of Twicket, and I'm actually also the managing director of the Belgian hub of SwissCognitive. And tonight I will be talking to you about unblurring human vision with AI. So, all of this actually starts with the fact that what we see is not always what we want to get. There are a couple of common mistakes when we look at images. For example, images, when we use old images or bad quality images, we see that they're quite often too low in resolution. As such, you end up with pixelated versions instead of a crisp image. Or in case your autofocus missed, you unfortunately end up with a blurred grasshopper instead of one that was actually in focus. Or another example, just before the lockdown, I was climbing the Peñón de Eiffage in Calpe. There's a towering rock of 300 meters in the sea. Imagine I left my dog on the beach and I wanted to take a picture of that dog. And I just forgot to zoom in, or my camera was not able to zoom in appropriately. So I would end up with a picture that's super out of focus. So my dog is nothing more than a tiny dot on the beach instead of a nicely framed close-up picture of my dog. These are errors that we actually want to get fixed. And there have been marvelous solutions to do this, thanks to a couple of new neural networks, which enable image enhancements and super zoom. So, have we actually not seen this before? Of course we have. Look, for example, at spy movies. Normally, so if we look at spy movies, then we take a satellite image or a street camera. They zoom in at a certain moment. They limit it. They enhance it further, and they will be able to actually go to the bus and spot its license plate tracking. On the other hand, we've all witnessed this with the newest generations of phones. Every phone is boasting about their new quality of the images. For that, they use multitude of techniques, burst techniques, multi-camera techniques with multifocal distances, especially neural networks over this, and most of the time actually just hybrid solutions so that they combine a lot. Medical, we've also been witnessing this. Not only has there been AI to help with the diagnosis, no, there's actually also a large piece of AI that is enhancing the medical data to remove the artifacts, the anomalies, the distortion, and even also super sampling defects to better analyze. Okay, so where does a company like Twicket actually applies these effects of super zooms, image enhancement? In order to answer that question, I actually have to start with what Twicket does. So Twicket is a software company that directly connects its end customers by means of web-based customizers with digital manufacturing. Why do we do this? Well, actually to enable brands to offer individualized products at scale. Okay, so what does this actually mean? Let's go to a couple of use cases. Here you see, for example, the Aston Martin DBS Zagato. This is the left picture. And for that, you see all the golden interior elements. These are 3D printed metal parts which have been golden plated. Okay. nothing new there. What's new there in that car is actually that all of these pieces are uniquely designed by the end customer. They can design on the pattern, on the outside, the openness, the interior structure. So all of those cars, which are only 19 cars, they are all one of a kind. Each of them is unique and designed by the end customer. Same for the Valhalla. Okay, these are the very exclusive cars. This is also valid for less exclusive cars. If, for example, you go to mini.com, you will find their interfaces. You will choose a product, a side scuttle, a dashboard, door sills, and you will play around with the design. You will put patterns on it, structures on it, you put text on it, you put your name, your autograph, anything that you want. And the moment that the design is ready and that you're actually happy with your design, you will order it. We will make the production files of these, ship it over to BMW, they will 3D print it, and you have your very own unique part. So Mini that you have becomes a one-of-a-kind Mini. So as you see, the sole interaction that we have with the end customer is through our web-based customizer. So this web-based customizer has to convince the customer that they actually want to buy the product, because yeah, they're ordering it, but it's made specifically for them. So there's also no refund, no turning it back. In order to actually convince the customer, our customizers have to be photorealistic. This means it is really showing the product as it is, so that the customer can really decide, okay, this product, that is my product. That is how I want the thing to look. This is what I'm going to confirm. This is what I'm going to order. It also has to be intuitive. If it's cumbersome, nobody will do it. And what's especially important is it should be stripped of all complexities and technicalities. You really cannot bother the end customer with technical details that most of the time he will not even understand. You should not be asking about certain resolutions or about color schemes or about all of this. The software should be able to actually cover that itself and make sure that if a faulty image uploaded, for example, that it's get corrected. And this brings me exactly to why we apply super zooms and image enhancements in our. In order for the customizers to be really photorealistic, we have to use renders. You could stick to 3D visualization, but 3D visualization is very good, but not yet photorealistic, especially on the devices. So we use renders, but renders, well, we render dynamic content. So not all of it can be rendered before, but most of it can be rendered before on the server side. And everything that we render server side, we do this at a very low resolution. Why a low resolution? Well, actually, it's quite simple. We have less server costs. It's a lot faster. It takes less memory to store, and especially it's less memory to download. So once we have these very low scaled images server side, we send them over to the client side. So there you take your phone, you take your computer, and you want to visualize it. So based on the device itself, so we check on which device we are and what kind of specs it has. We upscale the images to the correct resolution. And by doing that, we actually also enhance the quality. So we do tone refinement. We adapt the color scheme to actually the screen on which it is viewed. We have edge detection on it for really crisp edges so that the image looks top notch. Okay, let me give you an example of this for a handbag customizer. So on the left side, you will actually see the renders which we have on the server. These are quite low resolutions because it's only QHD. So this is 960 by 540. And when we view this, so when we view this client side, we will actually upscale this. We can upscale it to HD, full HD, QHD, or even to QHD plus. QHD plus, it's 3,200 times 1,800. So it is really a lot of upsampling. Unfortunately, we cannot get better than that, but this is already a lot more than most of the screens can actually handle. And by doing this on the device itself, we actually use the free calculation power. On the server, we use it on very basic elements, on low resolution, whereas we upscale it for free computationally at the device itself. Okay, so this is really on the imaging and on the experience of the end customer. It's also the other way around. In production, it's also where we use it. Why? Well, a lot of our customers, they're uploading assets. This is images, logos, autographs, these kind of things. As I said, we really cannot bother them with details like, okay, the resolution of your image has to be 500 times 800. No, this is a complexity that our software has to cope with itself. And on top of that, we can actually once again enhance the image quality so that in production, we don't have discretization problems, which are inherent to pixels. And we can actually just get smooth curves out of it so that when things are 3D printed, it doesn't look ragged, but it looks like really rounded. For example, where would we see this? I will give, to conclude this talk, I would give a final use case of this. And this is actually leather embossing. You will already see this in a lot of cars or for luxurious handbag brands. That instead of having a regular logo of the brand embossed in the leather, you can actually upload your own image, your own logo into the car, into your bag. And for that, we take your logo into our customizer. We make very custom stamp, which is used to emboss leather. And by means of that stamp, your individualized seats, handbags, and stuff are made. Okay, so let me give you an example of what our software is actually capable of. I will use the Porsche logo for this. So if you would upload a Porsche logo, I'm only showing here on the left side and on the right side as well, a quarter of the logo. So the entire image is uploaded, is 300 by 300. As you see, this is not something that you want to emboss in the leather of a Porsche because, yeah, it doesn't look right. It's totally off. So what we do, we actually, on the server side, we upscale this to 1,000 by 1,000. And especially, we also enhance the edge quality of this so that we really have extremely smooth edges so that when it gets embossed into the leather, you really have the crispness of and the quality of an embossing that you want. Right. And with these applications, I'd like to conclude my talk. So thank you very much. And if you have any questions, I will.
Great. Thanks a lot, Olivier, for this practical insights. This is what we love to see how we can apply all this technology in our real life. Besides that, it was great insights. So we don't have any questions now. So what I would like to take the advantage of having another 2 minutes of your time. I would like to discuss with you what's next. What's next in the matter of this combination of AI, 3D, additive manufacturing. Actually, what you elaborated now, what is your big vision about where this is going to be?
Oh, well, my big vision is actually that it's going on twofold, because all the applications which I've been telling about today is a bit more on the front end of the 3D printing side. So it's all about customer interaction and it was all about image quality. There's also a very, very big part on the back end, actually, at the production sites. So if you I will take an example. For example, if you would start 3D printing glasses, and those glasses, they are actually biometrically adapted. So you start from a 3D scan of your face, you have it perfectly fitted onto you, so the dimensions fit perfectly for you. You would start 3D printing that. So imagine a 3D printer. It is big block of powder, and out of that powder comes like 150 glasses, all the same design, but they have tiny differences. One is a tiny bit bigger, the other one is a tiny bit smaller, the other one, the temples are a bit longer, these kind of things. And right now, they are all manually selected out of that bin. So there is somebody over there checking the glasses. They have right now, to help them, some extra add-ons onto it, which they have to break off, they have to send it so that you don't see it anymore. Where a lot of research is right now going to is actually not on object recognition, but really on design recognition. So that you just 3D scan the glasses, and rather than saying, okay, these are glasses, no, you say, okay, well, these are the glasses of customer X, and you immediately be able to label and fully automate this. So that really is where I see AI and additive manufacturing really combining and shaking hands, because that is where you could really automate things and get things really personal.
Great, thanks a lot. Now we do get some question in. You could see them by yourself also at the Q&A. One question is whether you are planning to involve your startup in military-based GIS applications.
For now, no.
We do have others, so I just go on. For medical data, how do you ensure that enhancing the data with AI tools does not lead to loss of important biomedical features?
Well, that's actually a very good question. So what's happening over there is actually that with the enhancement elements, you're actually in a territory where the medical data is missing. If you look, for example, at the CT scan, they're all slices. So where you take the slices, you have the exact data, but in between those slices, there are interpolation elements. And all of these interpolation elements, they are a bit defectuous. So the neural networks, they're actually trained to actually improve that. So they're improving data which is not there. They're not touching the existing data.
Great, thanks. Some others, now they're coming, and we do have still another minute. In 3D modeling, you have any kind of templates, or are all models designed from scratch?
No, that is indeed also a very good question. So what typically happens is you design a base model, a base design from scratch, and this base design is then further altered to get to the actual end part, which is the individualized part. So, for example, if I would make it clear within an automotive sample again, so the designer at Mini, he designs the shape of the dashboard. So that's really starting from scratch. And based on that design, you would actually make a template. And on that template, you would further select the pattern, the text, and these kind of things. And then you're starting from that template and not from scratch to make the final production element. So it's a bit twofold.
Thank you. We still have questions, but now I have to finalize because we're going to introduce the next speaker. So whoever still has questions, please meet Olivier at backstage or chat with him in one-to-one. I'm sure he will be able to cover your questions. Olivier, it was a great pleasure having you here with us on a virtual base, and I
Pleasure
hope
was
as soon as
mine.
the crisis are over, we will meet personally again. So, talk to you soon. Thanks, Olivier.
All right, bye-bye.
Now, it's my honor and great pleasure to introduce you to Irakli Beridze. He is head of the Center of AI and Robotics of the UN Interregional Crime and Justice Research Center. He's advising governments and international organizations on numerous issues related to international security, scientific and technological developments, emerging technologies, innovation and disruptive potential of new technologies, particularly on the issue on crime prevention, criminal justice, and security. He is a member of various international groups and task forces, including the World Economic Forum's Global AI Council, the UN High-Level Panel for Digital Cooperation, the High-Level Expert Group of AI on the European Commission. Thank you very much that you're taking the time to stay with us and share your insights with our global audience. Irakli, the virtual stage is yours.
Okay, fantastic. So I share my screen and I start my presentation. Thank you very much, first of all, for inviting me here, and thanks a lot. It's my pleasure to join you here this evening from The Hague. I see that there are a lot of people joining from all corners of the world, and we as a United Nations organization really excited to bring our voice, bring our suggestions, opinions, and ideas to the entire world. My presentation will be on the AI and law enforcement during and after COVID. Well, look, for some time now, I start my keynote presentations with this slide and with the notion that we are richer, smarter, and more connected than ever before as a human species, and we have an unprecedented opportunity to accelerate solutions for unsolvable problems. Now, this was all very, very true until we entered COVID, and now today is the 6th of May, 2020, and the question really arises that are we really that rich, smart, or that connected? I hope these notions are still true, and with recent developments, it gives me a lot of hope that we are still smart, we are still very connected, and we're still accumulating wealth, which will help us to solve the problems. Now, what happened is that we entered COVID, situation has changed, and probably a lot of it, which we've learned now and which we are learning now, will have a really lasting effects. And some of it will be actually for good. For example, this very time, I was supposed to travel between San Francisco, Kyoto, and Geneva, and I would have been very tired with the jet lag. And right now, I'm sitting in my room here in The Hague and attending more conferences, doing more work, and reaching out to more people. And this is really, really a beneficial thing. And I hope that we will actually sort of manage to reap the benefits of some of the things which has happened during this pandemic. Now, we are at the front. I mean, with the law enforcement agencies, police force play a critical role in both preserving social order during the crisis and even containing the spread of the virus. And together with the healthcare workers, I would say that they are at the front line to fight this pandemic. And I really would like to take this opportunity, and I hope that all of you will join us to give the round of virtual applause to the all men and women in the uniforms, in the police uniforms, who are trying to keep the social order, who are trying to preserve our peace, our security. So let's join in this virtual applause to everyone who is at the front line, of course, together with the healthcare workers. Now, what is happening as far as the how this pandemic is impacting crime? Right, traditional crimes are dropping around the world, and we receive data which can support that. For example, in Peru, crime levels fell to 84% in March, and this is really amazing in different parts of the world. And here I have in this slide quite a lot of data presented. has felt, and we've seen the lasting effects of that throughout March, April, that traditional crimes are dropping all over the world, which is really fantastic. But at the same time, we see the different type of crime, like cyber crimes or household crimes, have increased, and in some cases have increased tremendously as well. Like, for example, counterfeiting of the personal protective equipment, and we've seen a lot of it is happening all over the world. We have phishing attacks. Google is blocking like 18 million coronavirus scam emails every day. We have child abuse cases, 200% surge to the links to the online child sexual abuse materials. Our center is running a specialized program on this, how AI can combat the sexual abuse of children online, and we are constantly monitoring the situation, and we see that there is a tremendous sort of increase in that type of crime. Domestic abuse cases have gone up. Racist, xenophobia, and hate speech, and in many incidents are happening targeted at specific groups or populations, and we've seen that type of crime has increased enormously. Now, governments introduced measures, lockdowns, limitations of movements of people, and closure of borders, obviously, and that brings the operating environment of everyone, and especially including the law enforcement agencies and security services, to become extremely complex. Sometimes the law enforcement agencies themselves, officers, are affected with the virus. So in that case, they are operating with the less resources, with the less force, but they need to do much more and much more in much more complex environment. Now look, there's a total difficult times for the law enforcement agencies to operate, and operational capacities are really being affected. There is, in many parts of the world, officers are lacking the personal protective equipment. They have reduced staff to the infections of themselves, and and they have added tasks to their operations as well. They need to respond to the profiteering and price gouging. They have potential use of viruses and weapons, or especially policing social distancing and quarantines. And in a lot of parts of the world, this has taken up a big portion of the work of the law enforcement. Now, the governments introduced the measures, and in many parts of the world, enhanced surveillance has started to happen. So what we have here is the face recognition technologies. Cameras with face recognition are installed in cities to monitor quarantines, and this is happening in many, many countries. Contact tracing apps, AI-powered apps to trace people's movements and their contacts. And we also have something called pandemic drones. Drones can detect automatically when people on the ground have fevers, for example, and these are also AI-driven applications. Whether these are the isolated cases or new norm obviously remains to be seen. But what we see here is that in response to the pandemic, we have new digital tracking measures have been introduced in 29 countries already, and you see the map where they are. It is growing, and we'll probably have more countries introducing that type of applications. We have advanced physical surveillance technologies, which are in use in 9 countries. We have COVID-19 related censorships already being imposed in 15 countries, and internet shutdowns are still continuing in 3 countries despite the outbreak and despite the situation where people would need to receive information. Now, concerns about the human rights and civil liberties are very real and very serious, and especially now, these concerns exist in the AI applications in general, but right now, with the imposition of special measures, this is an obvious case. It also, and this can also undermine the fundamental principles of law, like presumption of innocence, privilege against self-incrimination, proof beyond reasonable doubt, and damage the public trust, which we believe that technology, which in itself can actually bring a lot of benefits, including for the law enforcement, and we are advocating how that AI-driven technologies can be used for good in the law enforcement. If it's not done properly, it damages the public trust, and then once the public trust is damaged, it creates a huge backlash for applying technology for good. AI use definitely must enshrine the general principles of the respect of the human rights, justice, democracy, and the rule of law, and certainly will need to have requirements of fairness, accountability, transparency, and explainability. And I do believe that even during the times of the crisis, we should maintain these requirements. We should maintain the principles which we adopted. Recently, we developed a number of recommendations. I included these recommendations also in my recent article, which I co-authored together with our friend Mark Minovich, on 4 ways how AI could be used responsibly, where law enforcement agencies can achieve the results, but damage public trust. 4 recommendations include to maintain data anonymization, to include purpose limitation to the applications, knowledge sharing and open access data, and time limitation, where governments must ensure that these exceptional capabilities are scaled back after the COVID-19 pandemic is over. Will government scale back these monitoring capabilities? We don't know, and it really remains to be seen. Most likely, in some cases, it will. In some cases, that type of measures might be longer. Therefore, on the sort of a data policy debate or vigorous data policy debate will continue and will be with the lasting effects of the virus for some time. On the AI for law enforcement, together with Interpol, our center, we created a specialized platform where global law enforcement agencies are cooperating with each other, how to use this technology for good. Also, at the same time, how to understand the use of the same technology like AI, robotics for criminal purposes, and what are the malicious applications of it. We bring together law enforcement, industry, academia, and others in this platform. We have global summits or global annual meetings. 2 of them starting from 2019 were held in Singapore, and the next one we will be doing in The Hague here in the Netherlands. And it will be a combination of physical but also a virtual meetings. And this is something, lessons learned, what we've seen during the pandemic. Now, we issued a number of reports. First report was on the AI for law enforcement in April 2019. We came out, and the second one will be coming out in the May this year. And at the same time, something very unique and something that a lot of countries might want to be involved in is that together with Interpol, we are developing a specialized toolkit for responsible AI innovation for the law enforcement agencies. So this will be something which will support the law enforcement agencies all over the world to apply AI technology in a responsible manner. What to expect and going forward. So what is that? That's something we should be looking at in the future. Countries will be continuing adopting technology to control the spread of the virus, certainly. And this is not going to be over very soon, although we do hope that some of the applications will be scaled back soon. Likely lasting effects of the post-COVID-19 world, what will be sort of a lasting effect will be the accelerated automation. And this is not going to be only limited to the law enforcement, although law enforcement will also be applying a number of tools to automate their forces. There will be a data policy debate, and vigorous one for the years to come. And the balance between the privacy and security will become at the forefront of the discussions on the policymakers all over the world. And this will not be an exclusive discussions in some portions. Obviously, somewhat it will be more focused one, somewhere less, but we will also have some global discussions how to create maybe global charters to ensure that privacy is balanced with the security. More digitization in the law enforcement, certainly. We'll have a debate on using technology responsibly, and law enforcement agencies would need to make sense of the enormous amount of data which is being collected. And by 2025, we have projected that we will have 175 zettabytes of data collected. Now, in my last slide, I would like to sort of leave you with a very positive note that there will be an opportunity, and these times will bring us the opportunity to reshape the very nature of the law enforcement and the technology innovation, AI and emerging technologies, and we need to rethink the operational processes, and not only the processes, but police services, role of the officers, and business models of the law enforcement agencies. Certainly policing of the future will remain to be seen. We will have the augmentation, we will have a lot of automation in the police forces, but certainly the human will be in the sort of forefront of this innovation, and will be behind the technology, using its beneficial sides and minimizing the risks which are associated to that. With that, I finish my presentation, and I'll be happy to answer your questions.
Great, thanks a lot, Irakli. That was really, really interesting and shows us again how important it is that we all collaborate and that we all making sure that the technology is being implemented for the human beings. So with that, we're ending up our own sessions, and I must say it is very tricky. We have and had some struggle with the tech, and this just shows us how fundamental technology is for us. Someone, Dennis, wrote me, and it's so true, thanks for this comment, that actually now we realize how important connectivity is for us. Fiber, 5G, certain things we are not questioning anymore just because of the urgency now. If we're looking what happens in the hospitals, AI is beyond technology. And with that, I want also to show you who is beyond SwissCognitive's technology. It's my great pleasure to introduce you to Andy, my co-founder, to all of you who don't know him yet. So please follow us on social media, share with us your insights, and especially with that, a call for speakers, call for use cases. Come and share with us. We'll be more than happy to bring you on our virtual stage. We're most probably going to have another one in the next 2 to 3 weeks. So